Castle in West Sussex is the setting for fairytale architecture, gorgeous garden design, a spring tulip festival, and a tale of two gold crowns, one known as St Edward's crown, over 360 years old, made of 22-carat gold, set with 444 jewels, and at the time of recording about to be moved from the Jewel House at the Tower of London and placed ceremonially on the head of King Charles III at the forthcoming coronation with Queen Camilla in Westminster Abbey. The second crown is in the grounds of Arundel Castle itself, a magical Harry Potter-esque gold coronet which spins and dances on a water jet as if suspended by enchantment, leaving unsuspecting visitors such as us transfixed as they encounter this unique and unexpected spectacle. The link between these two crowns is a modern-day Duke, the 18th Duke of Norfolk. But before we delve any further into the connection, first some background on the magnificent Arundel Castle and grounds. It is situated in the South Downs of Sussex, southeast England, one of the country's oldest Norman strongholds. It was built in 1067, became damaged through sieges and slighting in the English Civil War, was rebuilt and refurbished in the Georgian era by the 11th Duke of Norfolk, known as the Drunken Duke, with further major reconstruction by the 15th Duke completed in 1900. For 850 years it has been the seat of the Dukes of Norfolk and their ancestors, and today it is the main residence of the 18th Duke of Norfolk, Edward Fitz-Alan Howard, the most highly ranked of all English peers of the realm, as well as the most senior lay member of the Catholic Church. Some 20 years ago, the Duke and Georgina, Duchess of Norfolk, commissioned the design of 2 acres of garden on the former car park at Arundel Castle, and in 2006 the garden was officially opened to the public by Prince Charles. Apparently Charles confessed to being touched at receiving this honour on account of the number of times his royal ancestors had locked up the forebears of the 18th Duke. The unique garden was designed by Isabel and Julian Bannerman, who took creative inspiration from the 17th century garden of the London residence of Thomas Howard, the 14th Earl of Arundel, known as the Collector Earl, a more salubrious moniker than the Drunken Duke, and reflecting the 14th Earl's avid patronage of the arts and collection of a great number of paintings, prints, drawings, books, sculptures and jewellery, much of the collection brought back from Italy on his grand tours, and allusions to colourful canvases or treasure chests bursting with bright jewels perhaps could not be more readily evoked by any other flowers than the colourful tulip in a spectrum of shades. And possibly it's a bit fanciful, but the narcissi on the grass labyrinth did bring to mind the luminosity of strands of pearls. The garden is full of intriguing structures, bold enough to hold their own in the shadow of both a magnificent castle and a cathedral, and which from a distance evoke the stonework and ornamentation of the Italian Renaissance style that influenced Jacobean gardens of the 17th century, but are actually carved from green oak, and on closer inspection create an effective but quirky synthesis of historic and modern design. Green oak provides a softer textural character to the strong architectural drama of the form, and gives the visitor a sense of being part of a theatrical set created for the floral performers. There is also a pleasing harmony between the texture and tone of wood, the figures and features in the skillful carvings, and the joyful surrounding planting. The Collector Earl fostered the careers of many of the artists he admired, including Van Dyck, Rubens and Inigo Jones. Jones accompanied the Earl on one of his trips to Italy and designed an Italianate gateway for the Earl's home. The Collector Earl's garden at Arundel Castle pays homage to the designs of Jones with Oberon's Palace, a fantasy green oak pavilion inspired by a pen and ink set design created by Jones for a court spectacle to entertain the teenage Prince Henry on New Year's Day in 1611. Housing a beautiful shell-embossed grotto, its engaging central feature is the suspended spinning golden crown, which, despite the laws of physics, still gives a strong sense of otherworldly power, as befitting a palace dedicated to Oberon, King of the Fairies. This golden crown is based on the 14th Earl's coronet. Incidentally, the title Earl of Arundel is held by the current Duke of Norfolk and is used as a courtesy title by his heir apparent son Henry. But the mind of the 18th Duke will be occupied by a very different crown at the moment. In his role as Earl Marshal, he is responsible for overseeing King Charles' coronation. This involves the procession from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey, the coronation service, and the anointing, blessing, and consecration of Charles before the crown of St. Edward is placed on his head. The staging of a Tulip Festival is, admittedly in its own modest way, not entirely dissimilar to the organisation of a coronation event. The bulbs at Arundel Castle are carefully planned and coordinated so that narcissi and tulips emerge in sequence, with distinct areas of the garden given the role of providing varied spectacles at different times, a bit like an order of service. Just like the coronation, there's a tangible sense of anticipation and celebration involved. The mood of the visitor entering the castle is joyful and full of expectation. As with the legacy of past coronations of British monarchs, there is a great sense of history to tulips, long preceding the tulip mania of the Dutch Golden Age. For example, by 1067, as the Normans were engaged in building Arundel Castle, the dedicated cultivation of tulips had already begun in earnest in Byzantine Constantinople. The Tulip Festival at Arundel also has an undeniable sense of pomp and pageantry. As well as subtlety and discretion where needed, and as with a coronation, the festival marks a transition to a new era, albeit in this case a seasonal transition in the horticultural calendar. In the surreal and sculptural Stumpery, the twisted, otherworldly roots of ancient oak, yew and sweet chestnut branch out in chameleon forms that fool the childlike eye into perceiving dragons, lizards, dinosaur bones, underwater coral formations, galactic starbursts, as well as echoes of the cathedral's architecture, which provides an impressive and suitably Gothic-style backdrop. This atmospheric theatre of artfully showcased tree stumps was the dreamlike vision of head gardener Martin Duncan, who designed and created the space with his gardening team, incorporating the remnants of fallen giants from the great storm that swept across the UK in October 1987, and complementing the earlier development of the Collector Earl's Garden, with its emphasis on green oak sculpture. Incidentally, at Highgrove House in Gloucestershire, the family residence of King Charles III and Queen Camilla, there is a Stumpery created by Isabel and Julian Bannerman, who designed the Collector Earl's Garden, and it is said that when Prince Philip first encountered the tree root spectacle at Highgrove, he inquired, not entirely innocently, "When are you going to set fire to this lot?" The cathedral was commissioned in 1868 by Henry, 15th Duke of Norfolk, and built in the exquisite French Gothic style of the 1400s. By its completion in 1873, Stumperies had been popular in Victorian Britain for almost a quarter of a century, not least because they showcased fashionable ferns and reconnected an industrialised society to the raw, natural world from which it had become alienated, albeit with a romanticised idealism. Today, the modern Stumpery presents the romanticised vision of nature's beauty, also recognition that upended roots provide an essential habitat for wildlife, as well as a dramatic landscape for beautiful planting.
So